Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach.
I'm Mac.
And today we're talking about 10 small games with big moments. Or pieces to them where you have to make a, tough decision, I would say. It's kind of what we'll see what the title of this ends up being, but that's pretty much what we're doing, is talking about kind of some of the simpler games in our collection where it feels like there's these moments in the game where it's like, I really have to make the right move here. It will probably cost me.
Yeah. If you think of a better title, leave it in the comments below.
Yes, and let us know what games you think should have been on this list.
Yes.
And these are in no particular order. We're just kind of pulling these 10 that we have that we kind of decided on together. And we will start with a game that we don't actually own, the actual copy of this one, but have played it on Board Game Arena. I've played it many times. You've played this one once, but it can be played with a deck of cards, and it is Regicide. So this is a game where you are taking on the royal cards, the court cards in a deck, and taking them out via using these different cards that have different powers and stuff. And the thing that I think is maybe the decision point in this one, because it's really, once you know what each card does, I think this one's a relatively simple game. Like some of them double your attacks, because each of the cards has like a health value, or each of the royal cards, and then you can attack them.
Different suits have different powers for how to attack, and
and then there are ones that allow you to. So there's a kind of another deck that everyone's pulling from. So one of the suits allows you to pull cards from the deck back into your hand to fill it. Because you can only use cards from your hand, and then there's a discard pile, and then there's a card type that allows you to put the discard pile back into that deck pile. And that's where I think the moment can come from, deciding I could play this card which would, defeat that royal or whatever, but if I do that, then I know I have to take that next move, and do I have enough strength to take out the next one after that, and what will that symbol be? Because if I do one or if I don't play this card, maybe that I have that won't defeat it, but would allow me to draw cards back into my hand, and then the next one is that symbol, because whatever suit the royal is, that effect no longer happens. So you get into a position where you are unable to either put cards back into that deck or draw them into your hand, which could cause you to lose the game. And it's just it makes you. I don't know that it's happening throughout the entire time, but there are moments where you have to make those decisions, and
they sometimes impact the rest of the game.
Right, and they could end up being the death of you. But yeah, so that is Regicide. I definitely recommend looking that one up, especially since you can play it with a deck of cards.
Right. All right. Next up, we've got Lost Cities.
Yes. And this one is one that you're maybe making the decisions a little bit more often, but I think the biggest one in this game, because this is a two-player only game, where you're going on these expeditions, which are really just different colored rows that you're making, or columns in front of you, and I think the biggest decision is when you have like either handshakes or something else, just in general, starting a new expedition, because when you start that, you immediately get negative 20 points, and if there's these handshake cards that can multiply for good, but you start by multiplying into more negatives, so then you go to like minus 40, minus 60. So it could get really bad fast if you end up starting an expedition that you are unable to add enough cards back to, because you get the whole, I think it's from 2 to 10, and then 3 handshake cards, and you'll add the sum of all the numbers and trying to get back to 20 or over 20, and then you multiply that positive by the handshake. So,
and the unique thing with this one is there's not really just a discard pile, right?
Right.
I mean, there's kind of
shared.
something, but so
that's another thing.
The trick is like, what do you keep in your hand so that your opponent can't have it, versus what do I have to keep in my hand so that I can continue to play? And that part is always really tricky.
Because each turn you have to play a card down, either adding it to an expedition or adding it to this center board, and then draw a card, which you can either draw from the center board, a top card from the center board, and there's one pile for each color, or you can draw from the top of the deck, and when the deck runs out, that ends the round or the game, depending on how you're playing. And yeah, that decision too of I'm going to put this 3 yellow down, and I'm hoping my opponent doesn't need it, because then they could easily pick that right up. Making that, and there's just that tactic of deciding when to do things, trying to hold on to cards as long as you can until they're kind of free to play.
Yeah.
Either on your own or in the middle.
Yeah. It's a really thin, tight rope to walk on that one, because you might decide that it might be safe to lay it down, and then nope, it was not. They pick it up so fast you can't even blink, and it's like, I made the wrong choice. That was really good for them, apparently.
Yes. Yes. So I would say this is the simple version. Yeah, and that is what we were doing on this list. But if you wanted maybe a little bit more hardcore version similar to that, I would say Arboretum is maybe that next extreme that feels similar.
Yes, I very much agree. Very much.
Then we can go to the next one.
All right. Then we've got Sanssouci.
Yes, Michael Kiesling.
Yes.
And this one, you can describe this one a little bit.
Yes.
So I don't do all the talking.
Oh, okay, well, so in this game, you kind of have a garden board in front of you, and you're using this deck of cards that either has a color or a style of garden, or like, I don't know, it's just essentially like colored card area for your rows of different gardens to claim a tile, and then you have to kind of put it in a row with the rest of like the similar
row and column
pieces, and then there's like a color aspect of like matching the color and everything too. And in that one, there's kind of a middle player board where there's 6 different options, and you have to use the 2 cards you have in hand, choose one to try and grab a card or grab a tile to put in your garden. And then on top of that choice, then you have to move a gardener down into your garden and score some points. And so you're kind of playing 2 things at once, which is how can I get something to add to my garden to get me down lower into the scoring areas, and how can I move someone effectively this turn to get me into a better scoring area. So it's always like, but if I take this one, then I don't have this card that can get me into the purple or the yellow or something next time, and maybe there'd be a good one there that you desperately need. And so it's always kind of this little trade-off of like, what card can I least afford to part with? Which one should I hold on to more? And how can I optimize this to get my little gardener down?
Yeah. And I would think, for me, I think the biggest decision point is moving those gardeners, because, you have the different rows, and as they get further down, so you can move the same gardener every round if you wanted, as long as there's a space for him to move down. Each gardener has to go down that specific column, and whichever row he's in, that's how many points you get. So if you had it all filled in down to the bottom, you could start, 4 points the one round, and then move them down one more, 5 points, move them down one more, 6 points. But yeah, deciding like, do I, if you had all that and you had never started them, how much time was left in the game? Do I move him to the 2 spot? Do I move him all the way down to the 4?
Do I try to get all of it?
Yeah, how greedy do I want to be? Because you want to always leave yourself a chance to get points with a gardener. So if all of a sudden you jump all the way down to 6, well, now the next round around, you have to move a different gardener, because that one's as low as he can go now.
Exactly.
Making
and then
that
you
decision.
get bonuses for how many you have as low as you can get, and like completed rows or columns, and it's just like trying to balance all of those pieces. Can be some big moments if you finally get like the right combo.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, that's Sanssouci. All right, next up, going back to a small one.
Coloretto.
Coloretto.
This is a game maybe you don't like, and I don't know if it is the decision part that you don't, makes you not like it.
Yeah, it's that.
But yeah, this one is like a pure drafting game of going back to Sanssouci. This one's specifically different colors, same as Lost Cities, I guess, too, but a little bit different. You're drafting these different colored chameleons, trying to do some set collection. And you score positively for, you're trying to, well, there's two ways to play it, but most of the time we play with the way where you're trying to get the large, or groups of 6, I think, is the maximum for points wise. And then after that, I don't know that it's any more points.
Right.
But you get positive for your 2 or 3 largest groups, and negative for any other groups. So once you get a 4th color of chameleon, you are now losing points for the smallest group that you have. But I think the part that's tough is you are and depending on the player count, it changes a little bit if you're playing with 2. But you are adding to these stacks of cards, and they can get up to 3 chameleons maximum. And on your turn, you draw a card from the deck and place it onto one of those stacks, or you take one of the stacks that has at least 1 chameleon on it. So I think there's a little bit of push your luck, and maybe that always creates moments. I'm not sure. It might be a cop-out a little bit when you are doing push your luck, but we may have another one of those. I don't know if this one isn't as heavy in push your luck, but this one you have to make that decision of which one to add to. What are your opponents going to want? Like, if I add this card to this, are they going to snap take this and I'm going to be stuck with something else?
Yeah.
Or do I put it on this one that maybe I know for sure they don't want, or maybe it's another one you want.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I put both of them on there, someone else will take it.
Right.
But if I put it on, a different stack, now I've got 2 stacks I can work with.
Yeah.
Just making that decision
and
can
it's
be
hard
tough sometimes.
and that too, it can be hard because it's like there really isn't a stack out here that's for me. So do I take the stack of 2 crap cards and make them work, or do I wait and take 3 crap cards because I can't
get
anything better?
Try to grab another one and make it worse.
Hopefully I can get one good one out of this whole mess and stuff. And I think that's the part that really gets you, because it's like, do I play safe or do I play greedy? And
am I too far in at this point?
Exactly. At what point do I just start saying go? And I think that's those can be some big moments.
And it becomes even bigger moments if you play. There is a harder side to it where you're trying to get like a specific
amount.
I think it's like 3 or 4, and then it just jumps really quickly. So then all of a sudden, like in this one, it's not as big of a deal getting some of those minus points, but in this one, you all of a sudden get like 2 of a set, and I think it becomes negative extremely quickly.
So quickly.
That makes it even more difficult. But the game itself is very simple, just like all of these we've had so far, and will, I think, continue to have.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Imhotep.
Maybe you just don't like this type of thing, because I think this is another one you aren't the biggest fan of.
Yeah.
Games with moments.
Okay.
Simple games with big moments.
These last 2 have had some really, really tough decision trees. I feel like the decision is almost exactly the same level.
It's probably similar.
Yeah, it's hard because you got certain boats, and how many things can you get on a boat, and do you move the boat? I mean, it's very similar to how many chameleons do I put out there, and when do I pull the chameleon?
It's a little similar, but I think it's similar in that choice of determining whether you continue to put rocks on these boats. So in Imhotep, there's different areas that are all kind of just actions that throughout the game you're adding these rocks or these stones, your own color, to this boat, and then eventually that will be sailed to one of those areas. It's usually a few boats out there at once, and you can choose which one to add them to, so that's kind of a decision, because they have different, some have like a space for I think 1, some have a space for like 3, and then they require a minimum number of rocks to actually be sailed, which I think definitely is what makes the game work. So otherwise you can just sail it with a 4 boat with 1, and that wouldn't really be as fun.
Well, so on your turn, you either have to choose to place a stone on a boat, or you have to choose to sail a boat.
Or you can
grab more
rocks.
Yeah, rocks.
But the biggest 2 choices are adding rocks to a boat and deciding where in that boat you want them, because sometimes it can matter, because the ordering of the blocks when you get to that island determines they'll come off. Whichever one's at the front will come off first
in that order,
and it'll depend which one you go to, and the order will matter big time then.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one, it's the epitome of a moment, I think, because you have to really be like, well, I'm fine. Sometimes it's easy because you're like, I don't really care where we go. If I put mine in this spot, no matter which one it goes to, I'm going to be fine with that. But there are some times where it's like, I could put this here, but I could for sure something by just sailing the boat.
Yeah.
And know that, because you might already maybe have a stone from a previous turn on that boat. And it's just like, yeah, I'm not risking it. I need this one to go here. But yeah, that can present some big moments, because the more stones you get onto boats, typically the better it is.
Yeah.
Typically.
Right, and then you don't have control, right? So you either have to do one of those 3 actions on your turn, and then it's like the next person gets to decide if they want to play stones or if they want to do something to mess you up, because it's safer to send you someplace that you can't or you don't have, like...
Right, if you're already winning the obelisk or something.
Yep, exactly. And so then it's like... Whew, that's just really not a lot of control over what your choices are. So you have to be kind of strategic with, like, how you put stones on ships and when you sail ships and where you put them. And
If you like interaction in games, this one has a good chunk of that.
Yes, it does.
A lot of player interaction. I think that's maybe something you don't like. That might be the thing that you don't like.
I don't like that you get to choose where my stone goes. And I don't
You could have chosen it yourself.
I don't like the pressure of having to decide.
But yeah, another one, like at that, all these are pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's 3 actions is what you can do with that.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple thing, but boy, does that make you
Boy,
think.
does it have consequences.
Those actions, the consequences of my own action.
Well. All right, next up, we've got Fox in the Forest, which is a tiny little simple game, as some of ours so far have been. And this one...
Another two-player
game. And this one is a trick-taking game, a card deck with some special cards. And in this game, essentially, you are trying to win a certain amount of tricks or trying to avoid earning too many tricks. So there's a full set. I think there's 13 tricks total. And so if you get 0 to 1, maybe, I think it is, you're like
0 to 3.
Yeah, you get a certain amount of points.
Or 2.
If you kind of are in the middle with like 2 to 4, you get like little points, and then if you can get like a whole set, like 6 to 9 or something like that, I don't know, you get like maximum points. But if you get too many, then it's back down. So
it's 0.
Okay. Yeah. So then each of these Greedy, that's right, it does say that right on the thing. So each card has like a little thing that it does.
Only the odd ones.
Only the odd ones. That's right, I forgot about that. So only the odd ones, and so depending on how tricks play, right? So there's always a trump suit or a lead suit, and then kind of these cards can kind of mess up how the game plays. So you are using these odd cards to try and shift the balance so that it's you can do these take tricks or not take tricks in certain ways. And I feel like that's really interesting, because it's like, he think he got me with this card, but I'm gonna play this one, and then we'll see, and then you don't end up with a trick and he gets set and you're like, yes.
Yeah, especially if you've ever played trick-taking games before, you know how much power you can kind of have if you're the one that leads a trick, and this one is no different. Especially in a 2-player game, when you're the one leading it, you have a lot of control, and yeah, making those decisions with those special cards, or just in general, based on that scale of how many tricks you're trying to take, and trying not to be greedy and stuff. Deciding when that moment is that you might want to try to take that control.
Yes.
Because there are times where you can take it and then just kind of run with it and get either win all the tricks or force your opponent to, take control and win all of them, and maybe turn into a greedy person and not gain any points. Just deciding when that timing is huge in this game.
Yeah.
Because it'll make or break you for sure for how fine those lines are you're trying to manage.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's exactly it. Is when do you take control? When do you lose control? Which is super interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And then I do like the 7-point value cards. Always having to keep those in mind, because they're worth a point a piece if you win them. So
And
sometimes you can't just like lead like a small number right off the bat if you're trying to give control over to your opponent, because if they know they're going to probably win it anyway, they're just going to play their 7, win the trick, and guarantee a point.
Yes, you know from experience, because this is what I do. I take all the 7s when Zach plays his little low cards.
I know. I get caught with that a lot. I always forget it. So I felt the pain.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a good example of moments.
Yes, it is. All right. We'll switch it up, and we'll keep it with a little small game here. Port Royal.
And this maybe was the one that I looked over and saw for actual push your luck.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely has that moment.
Yeah.
Or moments maybe over and over until you decide one way or another.
So good, so frustrating.
Alexander Pfister, actually. It's probably one of his, if not his simplest game. I don't know if he has any other when I think of him, I mostly think of Great Western Trail and Maracaibo and stuff. So this one is much simpler than his others.
Yes. And in this game, essentially, there's one deck of cards. On the back of the cards are coins, and then on the front of the cards could be anything from a sailboat to swords to different icons or different
kind of ability cards.
People, yeah, ability cards is what you'd call them. And on your turn, you have a certain amount of cards that are showing the coin side, and they are only the coin side for you. And you have the deck, and you flip it over. And you decide.
You flip a card over.
You flip a card over from the deck, and you decide if you want to keep going or if you want to stop. And you can't take a card until you have, I think, 2 ships out there, 1 ship out there.
No, you can. Yeah,
is it 1?
Take it once you have any cards out there. If you can buy them, you can take it.
Okay, that's right. There's a limit when you get to like 3 or 4 ships, right? You can grab 2 cards then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to do 2 at 4. I think, is it 3 at 5?
Yeah.
Different ship colors.
Yes, I think that's what I was thinking of.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, you're flipping cards, but the trick is as we kind of have discussed here, there are different colored ship cards. And if you flip a red ship and then you keep drawing and you flip another red ship, you bust. And everything goes out the window. You get nothing for your turn.
Unless you have the swords to fight off that second ship.
Right. You get nothing, unless that. Then you get nothing for your turn, and play passes to the next person, and you're stuck there with whatever minimal coins or a lot of coins that you had, or
prior to starting your turn.
Exactly. So then you just have to sit and wait for however many other people to go until you can get a chance at a card. And you're
they on their turns. Once you decide, if you decide to stop and you don't bust, then you get to take a card, and then the person to your left takes one, and if there's any left, it'll keep going until, it hits the start player again, then the rest of them will just be discarded.
And the big decision here, is typically, like, how far do you push it? Because, you want either, like, the big coin cards that can get you some money, if nothing else, or you're trying to do these ability cards that can kind of help you throughout the game. Or there are like these icons that you're trying to collect for set collection to score you points. These big points because the game ends when somebody reaches a certain amount of points. So you're trying to try to get as many as you can, and then it gets really interesting when you get like 2 to 3 different ship colors out there, and you're like, if I can just get one more, I could buy 2 cards, or if I get 3 more, I could buy 3 cards, whatever it is. And it's just like, how far do you push it? In order
or you can just take the coins from the ships themselves.
Or you could take the coins. And the other thing, though, is, like you said, other people can buy the cards once you're done if you don't bust. And it's like, what kind of buffet are you leaving behind for them to scour over?
But you do get a coin from them.
That's true. But you might be giving them something excellent.
That is true. So you got to think about that too. So sometimes if you want to bust, you're like, I'm not going to give it to them.
I know that there's been a time or two when it's like, I can't buy any of this. It's not worth it for me to grab 2 coins, so I'm just going to bust it so no one gets anything.
But yeah, that does make for some big decisions. And I would say too, because you can save yourself if you do have the swords, but you have to decide at the moment that the ship comes up if you want to destroy them. And like you said, if you're trying to go for trying to get multiple cards during a turn, you're going to have to get different colors out there. So deciding at that moment do I want to destroy this ship that came up, or do I want to leave it and keep going and hope that I can defeat any more if it comes up of that color is also a big decision point.
Yes, it is.
In such a simple game. Just flipping over cards and buying.
Right.
Not really much to the game outside of that.
And the stack's like this big, so like you really aren't. It doesn't feel like there's actually that. When you look at it, it doesn't feel like there's that much to work with. But when you start playing, you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, there's a lot to consider here.
And if you're me, you just get 2 green ships back to back to start, and you lose.
Well, someone seems a little salty.
A little sea salty.
A little sea salty. All right. Next up.
Oh boy, the classic.
The classic.
Granddaddy. And I think that's what helps get so many people into games, is this one is a simple game, and it just has those moments where you have to make those decisions.
Yes,
and if you've never played Ticket to Ride before, throughout the game you're kind of collecting, so this map board, depending on which one you have. This one's America, so it's a map of America with train routes all over, and the train routes are all different colors. And to claim those routes or put your own trains down on them, you have to get cards, that many cards of that color, because they're different segments long. So you're picking those from this little area of 5 cards. You're drawing a couple each turn. You can either do that, or you can place trains, or you can draw new tickets.
Yeah.
And I would say 2 of those can be big time decision points.
Yeah.
2 of those. And that is mostly when you want to start laying trains and picking up potentially additional kind of end game scoring points, routes that you're trying to complete. And I don't know which one is bigger. I would say maybe when you first decide you're going to lay routes, because you have to only one person, outside of if the trains are doubled and you have enough players, only one person can claim each route. So once a route is claimed, you can no longer use that to get to those destinations. You're going to have to work your way around it some other way if you can.
Yeah.
So the longer you wait and just keep collecting cards to try to maybe
get a bunch out.
Get a bunch of them, kind of be able to go bam, 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 bam. The longer you wait, the more risky that is. But then at the same time, if you wait too long, then someone claims something. Or if you play one right away, then people are all of a sudden like, oh shoot, they're really close to where I need to go, so now I'm gonna play, and then they might take your route right next to it because they're like, I need to get that.
I think taking destination cards is riskier than waiting, because in most games, most Ticket to Ride versions, there's probably 2 ways that at least that you could get to that place.
Usually.
So, and if you have a handful of cards, it's more likely than not that you could more easily reroute than if you were kind of waiting for a specific color because you need this exact same link or whatever in order to complete something, and you desperately need it and you don't have the color in your hand. And the ticket ones are going to come with all sorts of positive or negative depending on where you're at. But maybe I'm biased about this because in our recent game of Ticket to Ride Asia, you literally blocked me from completing 2 cards by laying 1 train. Or 2 trains, maybe. And I was like, oh, there's no back way.
But that's because I laid them so early.
Yeah. Yes.
So if you had decided to lay them...
Well,
actually, you laying made me react by laying another one. So in a way, you laying... Yeah. So that is where that comes in. Because once I saw you laid that, I'm like, oh boy, she's going to want this route. So I have to take this now. So there is that... once you do something, there's going to be a reaction from other people. Yeah,
because you're not always lucky enough to be on separate sides of the board. Sometimes you're right on top of each other, and that is brutal.
So, yeah, I think that's... But I do think, deciding whether or not to draw those new tickets, it can be very beneficial. I like that you don't have to keep all of them.
Yeah, that would be rough.
So it's usually not... awful if you take one. Hopefully one of them, because you get minus points for the ones you do not complete. Yeah. So you're hoping one of them, if you can't complete any almost immediately, or aren't maybe really close to completing one, you just take the smallest one and say, I'm out those points. I'm just gonna do something else or whatever. Or maybe grab more the next time.
Yeah, and I it's not as big, but I also think deciding whether or not to take rail cards from what's displayed versus what's off the top is also a consideration. Not as big, but it is sometimes like, don't want them to know what I'm grabbing, or like, don't like these, and you could get 2 awful cards, or you might end up with 2 rainbow trains.
That is true. I don't know how often that happens, but...
It happened quite a bit in our last game for me.
Wow, it never happens for me.
I was very happy. Alright.
Oh boy. Now this is a smaller version of the game that we picked here, and that is Azul, or Azul Mini. Just Azul in general. And yeah, this is one where you are kind of creating some patterns by doing... There's these different colored tiles, different patterns on them, and you are filling out this little grid of yours, and you do that by filling in this one that requires 1 of a certain tile, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and deciding not only which ones to take, that can be big, but also which ones to put them in, because in order to... Yeah, it's hard to explain.
Move them over.
Because there's, this grid where you're actually doing the scoring. Once you do fill those in at the end of the round, they'll move over if you have filled in all 3 of them or all 5 of them or the single one. They'll move over and then score. And if you don't, if in the 3 one you only got 2 of the tiles in there, that will stay there until the following round. So deciding...
It'll stay there until you complete the row.
Right. It'll stay there possibly forever. But yeah, deciding which ones to put those in, because based on what's out there and the colors, it's like, I should be able to maybe get some more of the black ones and put them in there. But then all of a sudden, someone else is like, well, actually, I need a black one, so I'm going to take that. And yeah, making that decision of when to start one of those and what to put in there can be very, very important for the following rounds, because all of a sudden you get it too clogged up, and there's only like 1 space in your 3, 4, 5. Next time you're gonna have a big problem. A big problem.
Yes, you are. Yeah, and then too, like, when do you break glass? Or I don't know if that's what it's considered in this game, but like, there's so many.
You can take some
area.
negative points.
Yeah. When do I take negative points to get the first player token? Is it worth it? Can I get like the exact amount that I need that I can finish this out? Like, how can I help myself further get kind of these played out? Because you really do want to get as many of those filled in as you can. You do not want them laying over, and because that will cause a huge mess. But you also need to kind of pay attention to what your counterparts, the people at the table, are grabbing and playing, because you don't want to just give them 3 tiles or 5 tiles or however many they need to just completely fill a tile row. So there's a little bit of that too going on, where it's like you're trying to optimize yourself while also mitigating your opponents in a way. It's probably like, hey, you got to do what's best for you most of the time.
Right.
But when you have a choice where it's like, 60-40 one way or 50-50, you're like, yeah, I'm going to set them. If I have a choice, I'm going to choose setting them.
Yeah. Or sometimes if you do find yourself in those bad situations, trying to do whatever, like, prolongs the amount of turns you can minimize your own damage versus I'm going to cram all these together so that when it comes back to me, I'm almost certainly screwed.
And
you'd want to not set yourself up like that.
And they'll be looking at you like they're going to take all 5 of those because they've got no place to put them.
Right.
So -8
trying
points.
to optimize not taking the negatives too can be in play.
Exactly.
So, yeah. But otherwise, I mean, it's another very simple one. You're just picking different colored tile. You'll pick a tile color and pick all of them up of that from that area that you take them from.
Yeah.
It starts off with just these little discs with kind of 4 different ones on there. Well, they could be the same. And then they get pushed into the center to start to make big piles of each color.
Random,
Sometimes, not always, but they can.
Which is so crazy, because it's like, who would have thought, like, a little simple, like, little purse game, even though this is the mini, but that they come with, like, such big influences. Yeah.
Big moments. And I believe this is our last one.
And our biggest box.
And maybe the biggest moments of all. Biggest decision. I don't know. It could be.
Could be. It's so hard in the moment, because Yeah, all of these, I feel like it's like you really sit there and go, oh, what do I do? What do I do?
Hmm.
Yeah. But this one, I think, has some really unique pieces to it because you're playing with a set of factions, different cards that have different special powers, and the trick of this game is that you can only have a hand of 10 cards, and you're trying to kind of fight for some area control based on the color of your cards, or the lead color of the card, and how many cards are in the set that you're going to play. But the interesting piece about this is that while you're grabbing cards or drafting cards in some way, you have to at some point play those cards. And so if
you have a max hand size of 10.
Yes, and so if you have all 10 cards, but you can only play like
a set of 3.
Yep, and you can only play one set. So even if you have 4 cards and 6 cards, you have to choose one of those. And so if you miraculously do have a set of 6, those 4 cards are going to go back out to
into the open,
and everyone's going to grab them. The other trick about this, though, is that there's so many factions, so then you have to decide, am I going to go based on color? Am I going to go based on lead card? Am I going to go based on faction? Like, how do I best set this up? Like, what can I do to best optimize myself, while knowing that anything that's left over is going out to your opponents?
Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, most of the time you will be drawing from the top of the deck. You either get to pick up a face-up card or the top of the deck.
Yeah.
And usually the face-up cards get gobbled up because you know what color and what faction they are.
Yeah.
So it's the easiest. The top of the deck, you don't get any of that information.
No.
So, yeah, once you put those out there, if people need a wizard and you just put a wizard out there, they're probably going to snag that up. Or a green card, they're going to pick up the green card.
Yeah.
Yeah, so deciding how long to hold on to that hand before, I'm just going to play it because I don't want to give them, especially if you do not have a large, you have 3 and you've drawn a card, you're at 6 cards and it's like, do I do it at this point or keep going? Then you draw one, another bad one, so now you got 4. And then all of a sudden it might turn into, well, now that I've drawn these, now I've actually got this other thing I could create. Now, do I do that, or do I go with what I wanted to do?
Right. And you might set off on a path intending to do something, but depending on how the cards play and come, you're going to switch paths, and then re-switch again. I honestly, in this game, I always have a set of cards, and it's like, I'm moving them around, and then I'll, sit with it, and I'll think that's what I'm doing, then I'll draw a new card, and then I'll be like, alright, now I gotta reshuffle them because it works better in this way. So you're constantly, trying to figure out, what can I do to make the best of this, how can we make these work?
Yep. And then sometimes you have to just be kind of keeping notice of what the other players, how many they have in their hand, as to when you want to play. Yes. Because you want to make it so that when you're out, they're having to drop cards to you.
Yes.
You don't really want it the other way around.
Yes. You're always like, that guy's got 10. He's got to be dropping soon. How can I wait for him to drop some?
Yeah. Especially if they're at 7 or 8 and you're going to have to drop. That could be really big for them if they have already a set of 4 or something, because they are going to get potentially just freebies to add to that.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. This is great simple game, but... Those decisions are crazy. And then, there's a little bit, too, of the end game trigger where there's 3 dragon cards that come out. And kind of depending on, when those come out, you have to also decide, do I just play this small one?
Yeah.
So, has that little bit, too. I wouldn't say that's quite as big, but the biggest moment's definitely when to play those.
Yeah.
But otherwise, those are 10 simple games with a big moment or big moments in them.
Yes.
Let us know in the comments below if you have any that you think kind of fit that sort of theme. We'd love to hear about them. But otherwise, if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe, hit the thumbs up if you liked it. Otherwise, we hope to see you on the next one. And as always, don't forget to keep on nibbling on our content.